Welcome to this shared production between APA Publishing and the Psych Sessions podcast. APA Publishing regularly features webinars that are free to psychology educators, researchers, and practitioners. You can find the full recordings for these webinars at apa.org. And now, a word from our sponsor, APA Publishing. APA Publishing is offering 15% off for Psych Sessions listeners. So if you're looking for fresh, effective resources to enhance your teaching, you'll want to check out their peer-reviewed, science-backed titles written by trusted experts in our field. For example, More Activities for Teaching Positive Psychology offers hands-on strategies to bring the dynamic field of positive psychology to life. And Transforming Introductory Psychology, I've heard about that somewhere, reimagines how we teach the most popular psych course, grounded in the latest research and pedagogy. And for faculty who are navigating the demands of academic life, try Thriving in Academia. It provides practical, evidence-based guidance for long-term success. These titles are all ideal for psychology instructors, graduate students, and administrators who are looking for professional development resources that support both teaching and career growth. So visit apa.org and at checkout, use the code PS, that's capital P and capital S for Psych Sessions, 15 for 15% off your order. That's PS15 for 15% off your order at apa.org.
Welcome, everyone, to our session on transforming introductory psychology. My name is Andrea Bergoa. I am a higher ed marketing manager here at APA Publishing. We're so happy to have you with us today. As you can see, chat is open. Please feel free to use chat to talk to your fellow attendees. If you have questions for our panelists, please use the Q&A option at the bottom of your Zoom screen. That is going to be easier to keep track of than questions in chat. I'm going to go ahead and welcome our panelists today. As I mentioned, this is a partnership between APA Publishing and the Psych Sessions podcast. An audio-only version of this will be released as an episode of Psych Sessions in the near future. Our panelists today are Garth Neufeld, professor of psychology at Cascadia College, host of Psych Sessions, and editor of Transforming Introductory Psychology, and Regan Gurung, professor of psychology at Oregon State University, author of APA's Study Like a Champ and upcoming Teach Like a Champ, and also editor of Transforming Introductory Psychology. So I welcome you both to our session today. We're happy to have you, and I will hand the mic over.
Well, thanks so much. And Regan, I'm glad you didn't go through your book list. We'd be here all day. So I'm trying to take it easy on people over here.
That's funny, Garth. Big shout out to everybody joining us from literally all over the world. Super excited, Garth, to get this opportunity to chat with you about things. And we've sort of lined this up to be a little different from the other times we've done these, right?
That's right. This is going to be a little bit more conversational. We've been giving overviews of intro psych recommendations from our APA work with a team of folks who you'll soon meet, at least in a picture. And we've been talking about this for years, and you've probably seen the outcomes. And so it's been 5 years, if you can believe it, since these recommended outcomes and all the recommendations came out. And so we've been doing some looking back and looking forward and thinking about what's working and what's not. And today is going to be with an eye towards implementation. How do you actually take these recommendations and use them in your classrooms? And over trial and error, and we'll share some of these like crash and burn stories with you today, we have found a way forward that we would love to share with you. So, and Andrea, I just wanted to make sure that we are recording in this presenter view. I don't get to see that button. So anyway, welcome. And Psych Sessions is so proud to partner with APA Publishing on this. This is right up our alley, and you can find us at psychsessions.org, and we'll tell you more about what Psych Sessions has to offer in terms of intro specific, if you're here about intro today. Anything else to get started today, Regan? Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, I think right off the bat, it may be a good idea to say where we say a little bit about the context that we teach in, because that way people will immediately know where we're coming from, even though you and I will take pains to talk about very different contexts, and not just the state that you teach in, that's important, but the country that you teach in, the part of the country world that you teach in, but also the type of university. So Oregon State University, where I teach, is Research One school, about 36,000 students. And our intro psych class, we have a whole intro psych program where we have about 3,000 students enrolling in intro psych through the year. We are on the term system, and I think that's an important thing to mention, since I know many of you will be on the semester system. We are on the term system, so especially when it comes to recommendations about content, immediately we are talking about 2 terms where we have a Psych 201, a Psych 202. The other thing I want to say at the get-go, 2 other little cool, neat things to share that people can either ask me about now or later. We often offer a very large section of our class, and then we have many small sections taught by grad students. So I will teach a 400-person section. Grad students will teach a 50-person section, and then we do online and in person. So some key contextual stuff. And even though I'll try and mention that when relevant, when I talk about the kinds of things that I've been trying and doing from the recommendations, Research One School, my big, very large class is very important. The good news is I also taught at a teaching-focused institution for 20 years at the University of Wisconsin in Green Bay. There taught large classes without grad students, and there the large classes were about 250. But immediately that brought home to me how different who's sitting in that classroom can be, and how important that is for us when we design the course. So just some context stuff for me. Garth, how about you?
I'll be talking about community college students and a community college context in a small classroom. I'll also be talking about online teaching today a little bit, because I know so many of us teach intro, at least in part, online. And so we want to make sure that we cover context. I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully this PowerPoint presentation does come up. Regan, you can see that all right?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Now, folks, this is not necessary because we've kind of shaped this conversation for audio first. In Zoom, there's a nice little toggle now at the top left of your screen, I think, at least it is for me, where you can watch the people having a conversation, or you can toggle over to the slide presentation. So a neat little thing that they've done. We're 5 years later, and we're going to hop into this. Regan, let's share what we have learned in these years. Here's the plan for today. We're going to start with history, and that's going to be very brief. We've done a lot of these talks where we've given the history of IPI and all the research that has gone into intro and how that has kind of scaled up over the years recently. Recommendations came out 5 years ago. We're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about how we've done it, giving you some examples. But there are some cautions there as well as you're implementing these things, and we'll talk about those. Finally, we put together a PDF of resources and support for you that you can take with you. And then we want to leave plenty of time for Q&A. So, Regan, let's jump into our through lines here. Go ahead and tell the folks why we put these here.
Yeah, I think so often whenever we think about intro psych recommendations, and especially the IPI, all the great material that went into the Transforming Intro Psych book, it seems like a lot. And even without those recommendations, the course seems like a lot, right? Whether it's your first year teaching or your 28th year teaching, as it is for me, 27th year teaching, as it is for me, there's just so much there. And when you add in AI, when you add in, large number of students in your class, or when you add in student mental health, it just really seems to be overwhelming. And I think that's one of the big things we want to remind you of right at the get-go is the course doesn't need to be overwhelming. And the way to do that is it's so important to make these choices that fit you. So we are very cognizant of that. that, the way we will share some of our examples, you will see our choices. You will see how our choices come from both our philosophy, and something that Garth is just excellent at is really shaping a mission. That's how we do it. Where both Garth and I have a very start with that very firm sense of what do we want for the course? What is our teaching philosophy? And if you don't have that hammered down, or if it's been some time since you've thought about that, that would be the place to start. And Garth likes to hassle me about this. I'm a data nerd. I love data. I love to make choices in my class based on data. One of the things I tell my students on the first day is next to every single part of my syllabus is designed in such a way because of the research evidence out there. And when I share my philosophy, and that's a right off the bat tip right there, they know that it's not busy work. Or even though if I hadn't shared it, it may look like busy work, but it is based on research. And Beth, you're absolutely right. Pedagogical research, the scholarship of teaching and learning, but just research on teaching and learning. That's what should be guiding our classes. And Garth and I know that the bulk, so many of us do not have the time to look at all of that, but that's our thing. And it's not just a guilty pleasure. It is a whole out, passionate, this is what we spend our time doing. So that's what you're going to see in a lot of this is, make those choices that fit you in your context and heavily lean on that data.
So these are themes that we're going to hit throughout, that your course doesn't need to be overwhelming. You can make choices that fit you and your context, and you can use data to make those choices. And Regan, I do love data. I just don't love it as much as you do. And every time I come up with an idea, you say, "Where's the data?" And so that's slightly annoying, but it's really good for being a good evidence-based teacher. All right, so let's move along here to the history. We're going to give you a brief overview. In fact, Regan's going to run us through this. Where did the IPI come from, and kind of what were the recommendations that came out of there? And then we'll get into some examples for you.
Super. You will see in chat that there is a wonderful link to take you to the whole background. So I'm going to do this in under a minute because it's just important context. For the longest time, there was not a big focus on intro psych, and it was just absolutely wonderful where APA put some time and effort into putting together task forces to actually focus on the intro psych course. The Strengthening Intro Psych Task Force convened in 2011, the Assessing Intro Psych Task Force later in 2014, and then the Introductory Psych Initiative, or IPI, we first got together now over 5 years ago, and then spent 3 years actually focusing on those four main components that you see, the four main components, right? What are the main student learning outcomes and how do you assess it? How do we focus on student success and transformation? What about teacher training and development? And also, what about design? We had 22 experienced instructors gathering together, divided into four subgroups, got together, put their heads together, 3 years of constant meetings. We met in person, we met online, and the result is the recommendations that you see in the Transforming Intro to Psychology book that Garth is going to give us a nice overview of.
So one of the things that the Transforming Intro Psych book did was for each of these sections, it started with, at least or very early in the chapter, bullet pointed recommendations. So if you have the book and you haven't looked at it closely yet, you should flip to the front of the chapters to see after they looked at all the evidence, what are the big recommendations for teachers? I haven't outlined it and structured it the way they did in the book. I kind of pulled it all together in the next 3 slides, and I'm not going to read through them. You can grab the book and check it out, but I think these are going to make some sense to you. So here are the major recommendations for the Intro Psych course. So the first one is the way that we design the course. Probably not a lot new here for you if you have kind of participated in sort of any kind of course design work. backward design is really important. You start with your outcomes, you backward design, and you assess those. And the thing that was unique, and we're going to talk about a little bit more in the examples, is that you can create coherence. The intro psych course can often feel like it's just from like content area to content area, and there's nothing that is tying it together, which makes it less memorable for students. So coherence is what we're going for. And they came up, the working group on student learning outcomes came up with 7 themes that run through the course. Not even a novel idea. People have done this before, but these were the 7 themes that we thought would be really applicable to everyone. So obviously inclusion for all learners, there's lots of research on how to do that, lots of books out there on how to do that. It's another talk. Regan has lots of great resources on it. Okay, so we have design, and then we have, implementation. So folks are making these recommendations, but how do we actually implement them into our classrooms? And you've heard this theme that's going to run through today, which is consider your unique context and who you are as an instructor and your goals. I found myself at some point in my career trying to do what other people were doing, or hearing this is the evidence-based way to design your course and trying to do that, and finding that it was never really a good fit. And I've been thinking about sort of the gift of mid-career, where you can start to let go of some of those things for a lot of different, professional reasons, probably in your context, but also you just got a lot of hours at this. And so that's what I ended up doing, is sort of letting those things go and thinking about, how do I want to do this course? Assessment is a major piece of this. How do we know? And this is where Regan comes in with that data question. How do we know that students are learning in our course? And so using good assessments that are tied to your outcomes. And then finally, there is just a huge piece, and I think this has grown in the last 5 years, Regan. I don't know. What do you think? Skills.
Absolutely. I think, especially since we started work on IPI, but, going all the way back to Steve Chu's wonderful videos on how best to study, right? And Steve definitely led the way with that. I think what we've seen is a greater focus on many of these themes here. And I like that second bullet point, because I bet all of us, especially at this point of the year, we can see the issue of health and wellness, and both mental health and physical health, right? The flu's going around here. I get the multiple emails every day about folks being sick and not being well enough to come in. But there's also the mental health issue. And I think, especially after COVID and all the issues there, George Floyd back then, and of course now, the hits, it's just nonstop, where there are things on our mind. And when you take a look at what's happening in Minneapolis and Regan, and the murders there, there's a lot going on our students' minds. And I think that may be why many of us are focusing more on the non-content kind of things. And I think that's so important. And it was nicely played up in the chapters in the book by the Student Success Group. It's not study habits, especially in the face of sickness and crazy things going on in this world, that are a big weight. So I think you're absolutely right. Huge uptick. And when I look at the literature, whether it's in the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning in Psych Journal or Teaching of Psychology or PLAT, you see more and more interventions to help students study better. And I think that's a great place for course redesign. And I know one of the things both of us will touch on in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, Regan, one of the things I'm thinking about is when Steve first put out those videos and they went viral, there was obviously, it was scratching an itch that people had, not only for themselves, but for their students, right? And then we realized, and I'm looking behind you at your book, Study Like a Champ, we realized that psychology is where a lot of this stuff is a natural home, right? Like to learn how to study, to learn effective methods for memory and learning. And this is a natural place for it. I think what's happened in the last 5 years is that our eyes have kind of been open to especially all the cultural things that are happening, that are the questions that our students have and are bringing into our classroom, we realize like psychology is a good home for a lot of these questions. And so maybe historically, and I think it's important not to leave our history behind in intro psych, but historically we have just taught the chapters, taught the content. And maybe we haven't done a great job of making it active or applying it to lives to show students, there's a little bit of research out there that is going to tell you that your students don't remember the content very well. So if you are, I know it breaks our heart to think that I'm doing such a great job in my classes and my students may not remember the content a year from now, 5 years from now. But you know what they won't forget? They won't forget the relevant skills, the skills that are in our wheelhouse as psychology teachers. And so we think that skills are where it's at. And then you can kind of layer content on skills. And that is something that students will remember. Anything to add there, Regan?
No, right on.
All right, let's talk about how we do it. I want to give a little bit of a caution here because, and by the way, I'm happy to, I'm sure you are too, Regan, share any of this with anyone. And we're going to give you some ideas. I think that it's fine to use other people's ideas in your classroom. I've done it. I continue to do it. And yet, if you continue to do that over and over again, you get a Frankenstein classroom together, right? You get a course that just lacks that coherence. And so, again, we go back to stage one, which is what is right for you in your context? What is your goal for the course? And if your goal is, I got to get through all the content, you may have lost the plot. And now, unless your context is telling you you've got to do that, that's fine. But you can make it a lot easier, a lot more motivating to yourself and your students. And that's what I have found through crashing and burning, because in my first stab at going through the recommendations, Regan, as you know, I tried to do everything perfectly. Folks, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You shouldn't do it. You should break the rules. That's what we're telling you to do. Break the rules. We're going to give you some ideas on how to do that. Okay. So this is all about data and implementation. We want to make sure that the things that we're doing come from recommendations, come from research. Now, there is a time to be innovative, but then you have to ask, how am I collecting the data to see if it's working? And that's where you should give Regan a call and he'll help you design something that will work in your classroom. So the first thing that I want to just talk about is workplace skills. And these kinds of skills are the things that are going to endure out of your classroom. And this is a recommendation that has come from the IPI, also other areas of the APA. So the recommendation here is prepare students for the workplace. Give them skills in an intro psych class that is going to serve them, sure, in the workplace, but also in their other classes in different disciplines. And so there's some data on this. Appleby and other people, Neufeld, we're going to give you a reference list at the end. They did some really, really good work on these things and made the case for why this is and why employers are not really happy with undergraduates who are graduating without certain skills. So remember, my context is at a community college with about 30 students in a classroom. And I have this targeted outcome that also comes from the IPI, which is I wanted them to be able to communicate psychology clearly and convincingly. I want to give them this skill. Almost like a debate skill that some students would get. But I want to build that skill with them to be able to make their case. And so here's how I do it. You notice that I started, as we went down this list, with backward design. I started with kind of the end in mind, and then I work backwards and I work towards, well, how am I going to get that? Well, for me, what fits really well is podcasting. So students audio recording themselves to improve their lives or the lives of others, which comes directly from one of the themes of the IPI. Okay, so let me just quickly take 1 to 2 minutes to tell you how I do this. And again, I am happy to share. I have a PDF of this, and I'm happy to share it with you. So I'm going to teach my students in an 11-week quarter, I'm going to teach my students how to get really comfortable with recording themselves and talking about psychology. Not only that, but I'm going to scaffold it for them. So the first assignment that I have in my class is, I assume they don't know anything about podcasts. They've never listened to a podcast before. So I have them listen to a Hidden Brain podcast that features Nicholas Epley, who is a psychologist in Chicago. And he has done this nice research on talking to strangers. And in his original study, he has strangers get on a Chicago train for their commute, and he has them either stick to themselves, or they're going to talk to somebody, be assigned to talk to a stranger, or they're going to have just do whatever they typically do. And what they find is that people are happier when they talk to strangers. It goes way better than they thought. It's a neat little kind of field experiment. So I have my students talk to a stranger. By week 2, they are they're going out and they are looking for somebody to strike up a conversation with. And then they are going to go into our learning management system, Canvas. And the assignment is hit record and just tell me about what that experience was like. No video, just audio. Tell me about what that experience is like. And that is going to be their first overview. By the way, I can stack research methods on that. And I can have them kind of analyze what kind of an experiment this was. Tell me about it, the levels of the independent variable, et cetera. How would you do it as a correlation? But that's kind of secondary to this skill that I'm giving them. And then basically, as we go through the course, they're going to do this, something like this, about 10 times. And we're going to play with it. We're going to build it until the point where by the last couple of weeks, they can do podcasts in pairs, which is conversational, which works really, really well. They can turn on a video. They can go from a script, reading a script. They'll scaffold to bullet points in front of them where they just speak freely about psychology. For example, I just graded something this week that was biopsych applied to your life. So you're going to teach somebody about biopsychology using 4 parts of the brain. And you're going to talk about a hobby that you love to do. And so this is how I use podcasts and build that skill for students. And so that's example 1. We've got 4 of these. Regan, do you have any questions about that, or how was that?
Yep.
Was that clear?
Well, right off the back, I think, Garth, I have 400 people. Have you thought of ways? I mean, how many? I know you have a smaller class, and really, I find myself thinking, wow, how would I do this in a larger class? And my thought is, well, hey, what if it's one off an option of assignments, right? Where I'm not necessarily grading all of that. And my big question here, and I know at least a couple of people have talked about this, and Laura and Nathaniel, we'll get to AI and assessment, but it makes me think, have you tried to use AI to grade some of these to help you out with it? And again, not good or bad. There's some interesting research been done on both what the quality of that is and how students and faculty think about it. But I just think about, if I'm doing it, if I would like this experience for 200 to 400 people, is there any way I can make it scalable? Any thoughts on that?
Oh man, my brain's exploding with thoughts right now. I'll just say this. The way that I make it reasonable for me, this is the major weekly assignment that I have them do, right? And so it's one of them. But I think that 2 times speed on Canvas and grading is great. And I limit how long they are. So they're 2 to 3 minutes. They get right into it. Not a lot of fluff. I got some very specific things I want to get them to. And so structuring exactly how you want it is very, very important. I can grade these very, very quickly. And I far prefer them to written things. I also believe somebody mentioned AI. I got to think about that for assessment purposes to help out. But this was one of my solutions to kind of changing from written assignments to something more interactive, active, where we might just be able to sidestep AI a little bit. Now, could AI write this script for them? Absolutely. But they may not know this, but I know this. By week 5 of the term, I'm having them turn on their videos, and we're working towards them talking off bullet points, and they're showing me the bullet point note that they're using, right? And so in that way, I'm not about policing AI. That's great. I don't want to spend my energy doing that. So in a big class, Regan, I love it as an option for students to do this.
Yeah, and Garth, I'm right with you. I think my default is, even in my own academic life, is, I really ask myself, do I need AI to do that for me? And as much as possible, I like teaching the skills, and whether it's teaching student skills, the ability to write or learn material without AI, or quite honestly, even grading. And I will say, I know many of us see grading as a chore. My optimistic counter appraisal of that is, here's the chance to see how well I'm doing, how well I've got concepts
and
across, and how well students have got it. So, yeah.
Sorry, you paused for me for a second, so I stepped on you. But I would also just say that if you don't like what you're grading, you can change it. Break the rules. I just think I spent a lot of time assigning things that I didn't love grading. These I love. I get to hear 30 students in every class tell me about striking up a conversation with somebody. And some of them are like unbelievable. Some of the things that happen for my students, some of the great stories. So anyway, Regan, let's jump into example number 2, which is content selection.
Yeah, and this is a big one. And Garth, you can go ahead and release all those bullets there. I think probably one of the first things that we hear so much about, and I mean Garth and I, as we talk about intro psych, is the top issue is content selection. And right off the bat, I want to say, people, the recommendations coming out from APA's work is your license to unshackle yourself from content. If you felt like you've just got to cover a lot of content, you don't have to. All right. Now, you may like certain topics, but I love this pillar model guideline. And it's quite simple. If you are looking at so much content to cover, the reality is pick 2 topics from each of those pillars. That is it. That is it. And when I say that is it, APA is sanctioning that. The Council of Representatives at APA endorse this. So if you need backup to say, if anybody says, why are you only covering 10 chapters? You have the support. APA has your back. And I think this is so important, because the moment we unshackle ourselves from content, we are giving ourselves more time to dive deeper into the content, or the limited content, and the data is clear. Students remember that more. Right? So there's lots of data that led to this. Aaron Richmond and a bunch of us put out data on how much people actually cover. The key thing that I like to keep in mind here, for all of you who are wary of not putting in too much, covering as much content, if you fear, but psychology is so broad, I want them to get a lot. Here's where we go to another one of the IPI recommendations. Let's make this applicable, right? The themes, those themes, applying it to life, looking at those cross themes. It's a lot easier to do. It's a lot easier to make it applicable when you have less to cover. The moment you get into the next chapter, one more chapter, another chapter, it gets difficult. So this is something over the last 5 years since we started working on IPI, I have taken to heart, where I really trim down the number of chapters that I cover. And I will even say, because some of you are thinking, but my state wants me to cover this many. And that's the state of Oregon too. The state of Oregon actually mandates which chapters get covered. But the good news is it's within this guideline. And I don't push myself. I mean, I make sure I don't offer extra. So that's a big, big tip for all of you right here. And I'm going to keep that relatively brief because the message is clear. Limit yourself on content. And numerous studies have been done comparing, and my favorite is Craig Nelson's study on the persistence of unicorns, which basically where he cut down on content, and this was in an intro bio class, and he feared that cutting down on content would mean the ability to cover less, because he went deep. And no, the data showed that taking extra time on less actually made the students more ready to take in more. So that's my big one over there on content, because I know so for so many of you, so many of us, content is a big deal. You unshackle yourself from content, boy, you have the opportunity to work more on study skills, to work more on all those other things that we know will contribute to learning. So Garth, give us another or reflections.
Well, I do want to reflect on this.
Yeah.
The problem with me is that you give me an inch and I take a mile, right? So when APA opened this door for me, I realized like the textbook I use, which is a lower cost online textbook, it allows me to select content with checkboxes, basically. So I even go through chapters, Regan. I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but I don't even teach a full 10 chapters, I wouldn't say at this point. I go through chapters and I think this is less relevant to what what my goals are for my students for this class. Like this little section, let's pull one out in from the memory chapter. I definitely need them to do this part of the memory chapter really in depth, and I need to focus on it. But there's nothing magical for me about reading from the top to the bottom of a chapter. Sorry, textbook authors. I know that that's how you've written it. But for me, we're in the trenches. We're grinding here with students and student learning. So how do you feel about this? Am I wrong, Regan?
Well, Garth, here's the thing, right? I can switch hats, and as an intro psych textbook author can say, hey, look, we put the stuff in there that represents that area, right? If it's a chapter on sensation perception, the authors put in what they believe is the most state of the art. But here's the thing to keep in mind, right? To invite you behind the curtain, we authors are making decisions on what goes in. So when you adopt a book, you're going with the decisions that we've made. But if you go with another book with authors who've made different decisions, you're getting different content anyway. So how different is that, Garth, from what you're doing when you're saying, hey, you know what? I'm not going to cover all of this and I'm not going to cover all of that. I mean, my lab has done research comparing intro psych books, and the amount of key term overlap is actually very, very low. And that's why that says to me, good on you, Garth. Teach the stuff that you're passionate about, right? Now, again, don't make your entire course your pet subject, right? I mean, I'm a social psychologist. I'd love to spend 10 weeks talking about social psych because I think it's exciting. But no, see pillars. It's one of the two topics in that pillar. So absolutely, absolutely good with that.
Okay. I hope that, when Regan and I work with teachers who are as frustrated as we once were and still are about just all the demands of the course, the permission, I don't know, maybe you're out there, you don't need permission, but some of you need permission. I don't know why. I needed permission. I needed permission from the APA. And what they did is they opened the door for you to make the course yours, to make the goals yours for the course, and to do what is best in your context for your students. And so it's pretty cool. They gave you recommendations to follow, but within the recommendations are a ton of flexibility. And that's where I'm going to talk about this. Our third example is about coherence in the course. So here's the major recommendation that comes through from the IPI is to increase coherence through integrative themes. Okay, I'm going to try to do at least one or two by memory, Regan. I didn't prep for this. So how about this? Psychology is a science and adapts as new data develop. So that would have been one of the themes of it. Here's another one. Psychology studies groups, but there are individual differences. Something like that. Okay, so there are 7 of these. There's one related to ethics, one related to how psychology can improve your life. These are gold to me. I love them. And guess what? They resonate with different students differently. And I noticed that. And I'm going to talk about an online course that I have kind of applied this to. But just so you know, themes and going for coherence is probably as old as like teaching intro psych. And lots of people have talked about, like Bridget Hard, Wayne Whiten has written about it. His book is called Themes and Variations, right? There are a lot of different people who have figured this out over time. It's not new. So in this online classroom, 33 people, you can tell we're part of a union when you have 33 people in a class. I'm going for this particular outcome. I want them to, here's where I crashed and burned when I first started doing the IPI recommendations. I tried to do all 7 themes. I'm like, when a student gets through my 10-week course, they're going to know all 7 themes and all the content of psychology, and they'll be able to critically think, and they'll be ready for workforce, and etc. And it was too much, and it was overwhelming. And guess what? Failure. Couldn't do it. So I decided to take the recommendations as they're written and go for less, but deeper. So I now am asking my students to master one of psychology's integrative themes. So I've created these videos for them, one per theme. And these videos, I have them watch them. I have them do an assignment on them where they just kind of summarize what the theme is about. So this happens in the first 2 weeks of course. By the 3rd week of the course, they are choosing one of the themes that they enjoy thinking about, and they are going to follow that theme through the rest of the term. Now, I actually do this in discussion board assignments, but these are video discussion board assignments. On Tuesdays, they post a video where they introduce their theme and they talk about the content from that week's reading that applies to their theme. And then they watch other students' videos. They post twice by Thursday, responding to other students' videos about their themes and summarizing back to them what they heard them say. So they're getting the overview of all 7 themes, but they're really only taking a deep dive into one of the themes. I've definitely read research on student choice in the classroom, that being beneficial to motivation and learning. So I really feel like I'm aligned here to where the data is at, which makes people like Regan super happy. Regan?
Yeah, Garth, I love what you said about the how you started with 7, and I know that just makes me think about how when we first started using these, or when somebody reads these, you may rejoice and go, "Oh, look, I don't have to cover all that content," but then you just move the pressure to go, "Oh, I'm going to cover all the themes." At circa 2022, and it was horrible, right? So I think this notion about you don't need to cover 16 chapters, and 2, 3, 4 of you all in chat mentioned how much pressure you feel about that. You don't have to cover 16 chapters, but by the same token, people, we do not have to cover 7 themes, and I think there are just so many variations on that where you can either do what you did about pick one theme, or and this is the route I went, where I use different themes for different sections of the class. So there were some themes that more readily applied to 2 or 3 chapters. I used it there, and then switched to a different one where the relevance was higher. And I think that just was something that worked pretty well for me. Well, and of course that nicely relates to
solving.
Yeah, go ahead.
Solving it in your own context, and that's right. What we're going for today. So yeah, go ahead, Regan.
And you know what? Speaking about your own context, I do want to hit right here. Casey asked the question about, these recommendations are great, but as somebody who manages a lot of adjuncts teaching 101, and I think, that's definitely the case here at OSU, we have 14 different sections. And Casey, here's what we do. And for those of you who are looking for consistency, even within the local context, and right, Garth, they're talking about my context, and often the context is not just me, my class, but it's my university, right? I mean, I just can't go do something, or shouldn't just go do something. You want those students to have a common experience. And my relatively short answer for now, Casey, but definitely email me if you want more, is what we do as a department is we come up with an agreed template for all our sections of 201 and 202. And I think that is just so helpful, where we have a syllabus template that goes beyond the university template and requirements. It's actually, here are the assignments, the types of assignments we'll use. Here's how much we'll put to grading. Here's how much we'll put for, here's how much we'll have for multiple choice exams. Here's what we'll have with all the other things. And I'll get back to some of those elements in assessment when I tackle Laura's question in question time. Yeah, Garth.
Okay, so just if anybody was wondering, 201, 202 is Regan's 2-quarter intro psych course. So again, context is everything, right? Most of us teach this course in one semester or one term. And there are unique circumstances at Regan's institution. So there you go. I just want to
and it just, it's the same thing if you have multiple sections of your one semester course. Now, this does mean talking to people and agreeing, because we all have the academic flexibility. We want to do our own thing, but we give individual instructors a lot of flexibility within that structure. But because we put the consistent experience for students first, we make sure that that's consistent. So there are some really nice ways to do that, even within not teaching all of that content. Okay. Tackle before we hit other questions is I really leaned hard on the teaching students how to study. I've been doing research on how students learn and study for many, many years. And that recommendation from the IPI really resonated with me. When we did our IPI census, and this is, you can read those results in another Richmond et al. Publication. I think it was Richmond et al. 25, where you can see how the different ways that instructors work with students. In my class, again, my context, I really wanted to put the onus on more time for students. So there's actually a lot of data on attempts to do this. You may have heard about exam wrappers, where people have tried to get students to change their teaching. I went more basic than that. And I said, what are the two big things that help students study effectively? And cognitive science says retrieval practice and spacing. And I moved from a model of just sharing that with students to actively doing it. And here's my tip. Every single class, I teach twice a week. Every single class, I start class with retrieval practice. I put up 4 to 5 questions on the board, and I have students answer these questions without notes, without a textbook. Give them 15 seconds per question. The questions are either from the previous class, more often than not, also rewards attendance, or from the reading. And I tell them, and this is the key, I tell them, look, this is a nudge to your brains. And even if you cannot generate the answer, try it, right? Classic retrieval practice, do this over and over again, retrieving it, right? The second big thing is spacing. Here's the thing, folks. We, the instructors, we have some control over our class design. So I design my class to have them explicitly space out their practice. Basically, not cram, but space out when they test themselves. And so what I do is they have quizzes on every chapter, and they get 2 attempts on every quiz. And I mandate that they take those 2 quizzes separated by at least 3 to 4 days. Right there, spacing practice. So you and I can tell people don't cram, but hey, students have a lot of things going on. They'll cram. But my tip for you is use your class design, course design, whether it's your learning management system, whether it is what you say in the syllabus, to help students practice retrieval more and to space it out. And my favorite way of tapping into how it's working, yes, I see changes in exam scores, but my favorite is a midterm assessment. And that's what I've put down there. I do what I call a 2x2 assessment. After the very first exam, I ask students to answer 4 simple questions, 2 about them, 2 about me. What did you do that helped you study? What are you going to change to help you study better? Also, what did I do to help you on this exam? What can I do to help you better in the rest of the course? And what I love seeing is when they say what they did better, the thing that always pops up is retrieval practice. So you may go, oh, students aren't going to like that. You'll be surprised. The number of students who mentioned retrieval practice, both doing it to do well and then aiming to do it more, off the charts. And I can see the differences in some of their exam scores. And that's some of the data I'm collecting right now. So really big focus on that. And it's really flexing psychological science, right? That's what psych science says, retrieval practice. And and spacing, and that's the way to go. And if some of you are thinking, oh, wait a minute, I remember, what about interleaving? Great recent article that just came out. I think it was maybe Psych and Learning or STLP that showed where the folks in intro psych compared interleaving with retrieval practice, and retrieval practice hands down winner for an intro psych class. Interleaving, intermixing stuff didn't seem to have as much of an effect. So if you want to know what to focus on, the current data suggests lean on to retrieval practice. The more you can get your students to do that, the better. Garth, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, I love it. Here, if I could just be honest right now, Regan, I know, and I've used retrieval practice in my course. I talk about it all the time. I'm feeling a little guilty that I don't do it more because I know how strong the finding is and how good it is for students. And sometimes I just can't find the time in my class. So here's one of these kind of common instructor feelings where you're like, well, I should be doing that, but where do I fit it in right now? Because, and in my case, I've made these other priorities. And so sometimes you just get like I feel a little frozen here, Regan. Like I'm about to go teach a research methods class when we jump off this. Guess what I'm going to go start with? Right? I'm going to go ask them some questions because retrieval practice is so good. But, I feel a little guilty. So what do you want to tell me? Counsel me through this, buddy.
Yeah. Try it out. And when you see students asking you to do more of it, right, you'll go, okay, time totally worth it. I hear you on we all have the ways we like to script our class sessions. What I'm going to argue for is this is one element to put into your script because it is very simple. And Garth, I love what you said. You're going to step into class right now. You don't even need to prepare a slide for it. Walk in there, top of your head, ask them some questions from last class, retrieval practice accomplished. Okay.
So you just illustrated one of our major kind of through lines for this talk, which is it doesn't need to be overwhelming. In one way, some of these recommendations can feel overwhelming, but then there's like a creative solution that can kind of remove that. And I just love that you just said to me, hey, you're a professional. You've taught this class before. Yeah. You can go do it right off the top, right? So again, this is the value of being part of a community as well of teachers. If you're not a member of STP, Society for Teaching of Psychology, teachpsych.org. It's like $35 a year. And it's a wonderful community. Teachpsych.org. Just don't even think about it. Go become a member. We need these conversations in our communities. So thanks, Regan. So let's talk about resources and support and leave a few minutes for questions here. If you want to snap that QR code, we'll also ask if APA, Andrea, can send it out to the group. I'm not sure how that happens, but this is the QR code. We'll get this to you one way or another to just a sheet that Regan and I put together of resources. And the other thing that I want to just say is that if you want to hear Garth crash and burn, if that sounds interesting to you, we did a psych session series on intro psych. And the purpose of this series, so psych sessions, it has like 250 episodes on the flagship, which is a lot of interviews of teachers of psychology. But then we have these offshoots of particular kind of short run series. Well, this was maybe a season or two of me just trying to figure out how I was going to teach the intro class with these new recommendations. So I invited all my buddies on to talk through it. Mostly it's very embarrassing looking back over everything I was trying to accomplish. At one point, Jane Hallinan, well, she was nice in the way that Jane Hallinan, like you like Jane Hallinan talking to you like that because she's kind of like slaps you in the face and says, no, don't do that. But I came to a solution in the bonus episode interviewing Eric Landrum. It unlocked everything for me. So there you go. There's your motivation for that. We'll get this out to you. Also, Regan and I just realized that intro psych instructors need a space to talk about this. So Regan, do you want to just talk about the Academy?
Yeah, I think for the last couple of years, Garth and I have been gathering people together in Portland, wonderful Portland, Oregon, with the Resist Frog and all of that, and really taking really big deep dives into intro psych. And we have another one coming up this November. And I think if you are on either LinkedIn or the Facebook hub for intro psych, and if you're not, quick, roll on over to Facebook, search the group Hub for Intro Psych, and the registration and more information about that is there. And you can just take a look at the website. And if you really enjoy talking Intro Psych and want to do it for close to 2 days without any other distractions, this is a wonderful thing for you all to look into.
Fantastic. It's really the solution to the problem that we saw with implementation after the recommendations came out. So it's a continuation for us. I'm going to shut this off. So that, and I know, of course, we just get so excited talking about this. We went over time a little bit, but let's get some questions.
Yeah, let's take Laura. Laura's been very patient. She asked this question almost like 40 minutes ago. And the question is, Andrew, you flagged that too, right?
Yeah, I did.
It's a great question, right? Thoughts on how intro psych assessments might be adjusted to help students learn effectively alongside AI. And, we touched on AI a little bit, and I want to go a lot further. One of the big changes I have made, and here's another avenue, folks, if you're looking for ways to change how you teach intro psych. One of the biggest changes I made in intro psych, and mind you, this is with the teaching courses sections of up to 400, is moving the onus away from multiple choice exams to other forms of assessment. So when you take a look at the Oregon State University intro psych, there's maybe 45% of multiple choice exams, but there's much more. There's in-class activities. There are short essays. Our students write 7 essays in a 10-week term, and these are anywhere from 200 to 300 words. So they're not super long, but they're actually getting students to chew on the material. And in explicit connection to that AI question, these essay prompts are so closely linked to the class and idiosyncratic to our discussions that AI will actually not do a good job of answering it. And the way I know this is because I put each of the prompts into AI. And what I do is I take whatever AI gives me and then I send it. Yep, I'm really a geek. And I then take that AI output and put it to use the same rubric that we use to grade the student responses. And so far, no AI response has got more than a 70% on our rubric. So I think that for me, that's a testimony. So in some ways, are we writing them to be AI proof? Not explicitly to be AI proof, but by virtue of really trying to make them applied, really make them connect to what's going on in the classroom, they end up being more AI proof. And so to close that little theme there, students will use AI. I definitely address AI explicitly in the classroom. I actually tell them when they could and even urge some use of it because they are living in an AI world. And the student data, national surveys of students show that what students really detest is faculty who don't even talk about it. And they feel like we are then not preparing them for the world that exists. So there are some really, really nice ways to incorporate assessment and in the world of AI. Garth.
I'll just say that if you're going to use it in your classes, scaffold it. If you're going to just assume that students know nothing, and this is sort of getting back to how I did introduce podcasts, it is a new skill for them. And then also, if you're feeling overwhelmed by that question, like I need to figure out what I'm doing with AI and I got to start using AI. No, you don't. People can teach effective classes in a lot of different ways. Research has even shown that lecture is effective in certain circumstances by certain individuals, right? These things that we just throw out. So you can go back, but do explain to your students why. Next question.
Yeah, so there's another question here from Casey. Casey's asking, as someone who manages a lot of adjuncts teaching 101, how do I balance the flexibility of the pillars and this approach and the need to make sure students have similar experiences across all sections?
I actually don't know. I mean, you may have your internal requirements for what students need to know, but even if you kind of assigned all the same pillars to every class, I'm not sure that you're going to get all the same outcomes. You got different instructors doing different things. Unless you're going to create a shell like our friend, I know that some institutions just have the whole shell and then people just teach it. I think that takes the soul out of the class and out of the teaching myself. But it's a reasonable thing to ask. And I think even if you are trying to get that. You might get closer, but you're never going to get to complete alignment. But Regan, maybe you have a different opinion.
Yeah, and Garth, I think part of the answer goes back to what you said earlier on when you said, you don't teach an entire chapter. I think that's where I see the solution really is, I don't think it's unreasonable. And I'm somebody who loves academic freedom, but I don't think it's unreasonable if you have a consistent set of topics that are taught. But there are two main levels of flexibility, right? What if one way you can go, so the default plan, which is easiest of all, is you, the coordinator, come up with, here's what the syllabus is. All right. Here are the chapters we're going to cover. Here's this percent is exams. This percent is in-class activities. This percent is written essays. That's the easiest. And that's what we do. We say, look, here you go, people, 14 sections. Every student in every section will see the same thing. There's no discontent. There's no student discontent. Or, hey, my people in that class are doing this. Now, then we go to, but I want to teach this topic. Well, here's where you can go level 1 of flexibility, which is the department says, right, as long as you're teaching 5 pillars, the two chapters you pick from each pillar can be up to you. But make sure you're following the APA recommendation. I mean, that's not bad. That's pretty easy too. But there's even another layer, right? Even if you stick with the default, we are covering these 10 chapters this semester across this university. This goes back to what you said earlier. Which parts of those chapters you cover can vary, right? And you look at the average intro psych textbook is 30 or so pages. There's enough variance in there, right? And I know I did this when I first started teaching, and to some extent do it now. I have 3 or 4 different books there. I can pick and choose, right? So that's, I think, the way to go. So lots of flexibility, a good note to end on, right? Be flexible.
Yeah. Well, do we want to do a final closing question? I know we've got just a minute left, but it's been 5 years since Transforming Introductory Psychology has published. Things have changed since then. Is there anything that you would do differently or you would want to make sure you include in a second edition or a revision?
That one's easy for me. And we've touched on it. We do not talk about AI at all because this was all pre-AI. There are so many things I would say differently once we factor in large language models and what's going on out there.
And for me, I think that we didn't really talk about the teachers explicitly, like the individual in the classroom. The individual is really important. And I hope you've heard this today, that we talk about student-centered teaching, which is really, really important, but we don't ever talk about teacher-centered teaching. Who you are, what your strengths are, what you bring, the spark you give your students, all those things. We don't do that deep dive in self-reflection. We're not really trained to do that too much. And to start there so that our students might actually catch a little more of what we have put out there. And so I think I'd like to focus on that in those particular contexts that we teach.
Thank you so much to both of you for being here today and sharing your expertise and having this really important conversation. And thank you to all of our attendees for your great participation and your wonderful questions. We look forward to seeing you all again at another session. And have a great day, everyone.